When the first fleet arrived to Australia in 1788, they brought with them several horses. These horses were the initial ancestors of the wild horses that roam free today in Australia. These horses were initially used for work and war purposes, until set free to roam the Australian bush by an early settler called James Brumby. Since then, the Brumbie population has vastly evolved to endure the hardships that surviving in the Australian landscape possesses. Brumbies are seen as a pest and a threat to the environment by environmentalists, due to the negative impacts of land degradation and habitat loss they are associated with. Brumbies negatively impact the soil structure and vegetation cover of areas they inhabit, thus adversely affecting the biodiversity of the ecosystem of their habitat. The Victorian Alps is known as one of the areas in Australia with the highest Brumbie population rate. In 2008, a case study was conducted by Parks Victoria to assess the negative environmental impacts that Brumbies were having on the soil and vegetation of the area. In regards to the impacts that the Brumbies had on the soils of the Victorian Alps, three major areas were identified, the first being soil compaction from continuous trampling from the horses' hooves, which resulted in erosion, poor soil porosity, and salinity of soils. The second area was loss of plant cover. This was predominantly due to the first area of soil compaction. The loss of vegetation cover also increased the incidence of erosion and soil loss due to the lack of protection from the elements. The final impact was loss of soil structure in the wet areas, resulting in soil entering streams, collapsing of stream beds, and wallowing. Discovered impacts that Brumbies have on the vegetation of the Victorian Alps included change in vegetation composition. This is predominantly due to the selective grazing habits of horses. Weed dispersal. Brumbies disperse weeds via two main methods, ingestion and excretion, or via attachment of seed pods to their bodies. Native tree mortality. Brumbies have been observed to exhibit the behaviour of stripping and chewing bark off native trees. This has been recorded to reduce the regeneration of the tree's seedlings, leading to death in developed trees. Habitat loss and modification caused by the Brumbies' environmental impact, along with the onset of global warming, possesses a threat to the survival of many species. Brumbie population growth has been seen to increase by 21% per annum. Thus, it is in vast need of control to minimise environmental destruction. The most common method of Brumbie population control in Australia is aerial culling. This method of control is extremely controversial, following an outrage that a previous 3-day aerial shooting at Guy Fawkes National Park in 2000 caused. Over 600 horses were brutally shot, some being left to suffer for days until they died. As a result, the New South Wales government put a 13-year ban on aerial shooting in New South Wales, which expired last year. Humanists stressed that there are other methods of controlling Brumbie population, such as trapping, mustering, and fertility control. It is recommended that the Australian government plans future Brumbie population control in regards to land degradation and habitat loss by future forecasting of Brumbie population growth. Forecasting could be incorporated with an environmental management plan to determine the Brumbie population rate that a specific habitat can support without the detriment to landscape, biodiversity, or ecology.